my name is Rohan Sunkara, and welcome to our second episode of College Talks. So our goal with this series is to give high school students insight into the college application process, particularly when it comes to deciding on a major. And, we all know that choosing majors can be difficult. Some people know what they want to do since elementary school, and some people don't even know, as they get closer to college, they still don't know. But in each episode, we plan to bring in a freshman heading to college this fall to discuss how they approached this dilemma and landed at their current major choice. So we can all learn from that experience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raaga Kodali, and I am the co-host and marketing lead of the Hub Talks. Our guest today is Janani Elumalai, a hardworking and ambitious student who graduated high school with the class of 2021. She is heading to Northeastern University in Boston this fall to pursue Behavioral Neuroscience. This is an uncommon major, and I had never heard of this prior to this interview, so I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about this subject. Before we move on, the main topics of today's interview include Janani's experience with Stanford Online High School, her extracurriculars, the choice around her major, and finally, the choice around her college. Please feel free to introduce yourself, Janani.
Okay, I wasn't sure, but thank you for having me. And that was a great intro. I'm a hardworking and ambitious student, so thank you. Yeah, I look forward to hopefully being helpful and answering some questions.
Okay, thank you for introducing yourself. So I guess we can start off by discussing Stanford Online High School a little bit. So let's start with your unique high school experience. Obviously, you enrolled at Stanford Online High School for your junior year. For folks who haven't heard about this before, Stanford has an online high school from grades 7 through 12, which was founded in 2006, I believe. And it's highly selective. It has around 880 students enrolled with an average class size of around 11 students. So when you think about it now, of course, it's become the norm because of like the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of us are fully remote for an entire year or more. But to take this step willingly before it was a very normal thing to be taking classes online, it's very interesting because it's a very different path. Obviously, again, now it's very common, but at the time that you took it, it was, very different to what most other people were doing. So what prompted you to do that?
Yeah, so actually, I first applied to OHS in my 7th grade. And so they have several options. You can do single course or part-time or full-time. So I was doing a single course from my 8th grade until 10th grade. I took like one course along with my regular like brick and mortar school. And then in 11th grade, I switched to full-time OHS. So I was full-time for 11th grade and 12th grade. And the reason why I did that was because of two things mainly. First of all, so I said I took single courses, and so I had taken some more advanced courses because one of the things about OHS is that it's placement test based instead of going in a specific like set curriculum. So at like your regular brick and mortar school, you'll have like a very set rigid curriculum where you go in an order, like for math class, you'll do algebra and geometry and like so on. Whereas in OHS, it's placement test based. So you just take a placement test and then see where you land, and you can take the class that's at your level instead of the one that matches with the grade that you're in. So that was something that I really liked. And through that, I had taken some advanced courses that I would have had to repeat if I continued with my brick and mortar school. So I didn't want to repeat courses, and I really liked the placement test. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is that OHS has a really, really amazing curriculum of classes that are totally not typical in your regular school. They have this core curriculum that's philosophy based. So that itself is pretty rare. You don't usually take philosophy classes in high school, but it's required. You have to take a philosophy class every year because it's part of the core curriculum. And that was really, really interesting. And they also have some they had more advanced biology classes and biology research classes, which I was interested in. And they just had a lot of different opportunities that wasn't available at a regular school. So those are probably the two reasons why I switched to OHS.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear about like the philosophy based like curriculum and course that everybody has to take. I think that's really different, provides something, a very different experience for students. So I thought that was really interesting. So personally, I was completely remote for a year. Personally, I wasn't pleased with the experience. And I think the most distressing aspect was like it was difficult to keep up with social relationships, especially if you have friends that you see at school every day, that kind of thing. So for people who might be interested in maybe attending an online high school like you did yourself, or just in general for people who are, I guess, dealing with the pandemic or maybe are remote, obviously you've had a little bit more time to kind of adapt to that kind of circumstance. Do you have any kind of advice, or were you ever worried about losing, I guess, touch with your friends? And do you have any advice for people who are going through kind of that similar kind of experience on, yeah, again, just how to keep up with your social relationships when you're not seeing your friends every day?
Yeah, definitely. I think the social aspect of online high school is like the first thing that people ask when you first are like, yeah, I go to an online school. They're like, wait, what? And now and that was before the pandemic. After the pandemic, once people have experienced online school and maybe didn't have the best experience with it, they're already kind of made up their minds. So it's definitely tricky for me to convince them that like, no, I did still have a social life, even with online high school. This was one of the things that I think, worried about, definitely, while switching. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't switch earlier, because I could have switched in 9th grade. Like I was already doing a single course to full-time, but I really wanted to have like a solid friend group. And so one of the other reasons, I guess, why I switched in 11th grade and not 9th or earlier is because I kind of felt at that time I had a really solid friend group. Like I talked about like me switching to OHS with them before I did, and I was like, and we all made a plan because we were really particular that we didn't want to lose touch. So we would like text each other, have group chats. I think we had like a weekly call schedule, and I would go visit in school because I could still go after school for activities before the pandemic. So I would visit them every week. So we made a plan to make sure that we still stay in touch because it was kind of important to me. And so advice for people is that are looking into online school options would probably be to just be really upfront with it, with your friends and everybody. Like, don't just be like, yeah, we'll be friends, and then just put it off and like be vague about it. Make plans. And if you put in the effort, then I think you can definitely still keep maintaining your social life and go out. And that's one of the most important things about online high school, because you are going to be in front of a computer for a lot of the day. So you have to make sure, get out and like meet people and talk to people. So just making plans for it, putting in effort, talking, communication, I think that's what really helped me and would really help others too.
Yeah, and obviously we all know that like social relationships and mental health and all that kind of stuff is very important in your grades as well and how you perform in school. So yeah, that's some great advice. Thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people can use that.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice. My friends and I did something sort of similar. Like we would have like, I think, a bi-weekly call just to keep in touch. But I like what you said about like putting the effort forth to maintain those relationships. Anyway, I'd like to ask a question now. So how does one apply to OHS? And what is the admissions process like? For example, is it very selective or competitive, etc.?
Yeah, so from what I remember of the application, it was a while ago, but it's actually kind of similar to college applications now that I think of it, because you're writing these 3 essays that are like short, like 500 words maybe, and then you have to get 2 recommendation letters, and then you send in your transcript. And then instead of taking the SAT, because you can apply from 7th grade, I think for older students you could use the SAT, but there's also other standardized tests. I think I took the SCAT, but there are other standardized tests that are for younger students. So you have to have like 1 test score, your transcripts, and then 2 recommendation letters and the essays. So that's how the process goes. And then for some students, there's like a second round where there was an interview. So I remember I got interviewed, but my brother didn't when he applied. So I think it just depends on the student and the different rounds of application, because, well, first let me finish the interview. So the interview is just this short, like 20-minute thing with one of the advisors. it was pretty nice. They just asked a few questions. It wasn't overly stressful. I mean, they realize that you're kids, like you're 13 or 14, like you're pretty young. So it's I think a good preparation almost for the college apps, because it's like you've already done it once before for high school. And so as to how selective they are, I think their admissions process and their selectivity is kind of changing over the years, because they're a rapidly growing school. I think the school was founded in 2007 or 2008. I might have to be fact checked on that. But so when I applied, it was 5 years ago, so 2016. So it was only 8 years since they had opened. So I think they were a little less selective there then compared to now, because they wanted to gain more students. But now I think the process is a little bit more selective, especially since with the pandemic, there's been a lot more attention to online high schools. So I think they grew a lot in the last year itself, and they're still growing. And so I guess a side effect of that is that it gets more selective for the admissions. But from what I remember, I mean, just try your best. It's like, just try your best. Don't overly stress about it. Even if you can't go to online high school, there's other high schools. So it's okay. Or like Stanford OHS, but yeah.
That's interesting to hear. So, I mean, I haven't really heard of a high school that has that college admission sort of, that process. That's interesting. So I guess aside from that, what else makes Stanford OHS stand out? Like maybe does it, like you were saying earlier, are the specialty courses that it offers, is that what makes it special? Or like just what is that differentiating factor?
Yeah, definitely. So this is one of the things I only realized after becoming a full-time student. Before I was full-time, I was really looking at like the courses and transcript, like things that are factual on paper type of thing. And I was like, this is what makes this school so great. But after becoming full-time and becoming more involved with the student life community, I think one of the best things about OHS is the community, the people that are going there. There are international students. So you'll have classmates not only from around the country, but literally from around the world. I had classmates in like Australia and China and Korea, but then also like California, and then also like 20 minutes away from Massachusetts, like from where we live. So you get this really wide variety of people that you're coming into contact with, and they're all really driven and like hardworking people, because they've all worked to get into this school and they kind of know what they're signing up for. So they're all like super motivated and ambitious. There's this school-wide group chat called Bulletin, which is always going off with like tons and tons of messages, like I think 200 to 300 messages a day, because people will be talking about like projects that they're doing and asking for responses to surveys for research. And like everybody is doing something that's super cool and super fascinating and something that they're totally passionate about. And just coming into contact with those people is something that is really hard to do otherwise, because you're just like in your town, right? So I think that's one of the best things. And I met some people, and even not even just the students, even the teachers that you meet are really amazing. I think OHS has like 75% of the professors are all PhD holders. So like highly qualified people, but also very, very kind, down to earth people that are willing to help you and hold office hours, and help you with your ambitions and your goals. So I mean, I got to meet a bunch of people that were amazing, and I made some really great friends. And so I think that is probably one of the things that definitely makes OHS stand out, even besides the amazing coursework, and the professors. The people that you meet are like one of the best things about OHS.
That's amazing. I feel like that really embodies what Stanford University, one of the most prestigious colleges in the world, is all about. So I liked how you touched on like the global enrollment aspect. So is it common for international students to apply just because everything's online and you can access everything as long as you have internet and stuff?
Yeah, I think it is pretty common. I don't know the exact statistics, but like I said, I've had classmates from all around the world. And I think OHS, it's really nice for international students too, especially if they're like student athletes or they need a flexible schedule, or they're like constantly traveling. Like I know there was a student who lived, oh, sorry, my screen just like disappeared. Okay. I know there's a student who actually lived on a boat, which was like really unique. Like you don't meet, that's like totally crazy, right? But she would take classes from a boat. But then there's also student athletes who have to constantly travel for training and for tournaments and competitions. So that's helpful. And then for just international students who are just studying, they can also add it on with their regular school, like have classes in the nighttime or early morning. And so OHS accommodates that too by having a really wide variety of time ranges for classes. I think it starts at like 6 a.m. Pacific time is your first class, and then like 11 Pacific is your last class. So they really try to accommodate for international students as much as possible. So yes, to answer your question, there are definitely a lot of international students.
Well, that's cool to hear. I mean, high school with these people with different perspectives from all over the world. I mean, that sounds really fun. Yeah, I have one more follow-up question. So are students allowed to take any courses at Stanford University their senior year, similar to how in normal high schools you can take like a dual enrollment class with your local college? So are you guys allowed to do that with Stanford University?
I don't think so. One of the things that OHS tries to definitely make sure people know is that they aren't strongly affiliated with Stanford University. They have the same name and the office is on the campus, but like the actual university doesn't really have too much of an affiliation. So same thing goes for admissions. Like some people will come into OHS thinking that if they get into OHS, they automatically get into Stanford University. That's not how it works. You're just in the regular admissions pool with everybody else. And so I don't think you can take classes, but there are, I think, some Stanford professors who also teach like 1 or 2 classes at the online high school, but I don't think you can take actual university level classes. Oh, but, oh, sorry. There are several university level classes at OHS itself that they themselves sponsor. They have several post-AP classes for in all of the fields. So there are still advanced options, just not at Stanford University.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about extracurriculars next. So obviously this is an important topic since most high schoolers are slightly lost on where to invest their energy when it comes to extracurriculars. Sorry. So I wanted to ask, in your opinion, how many extracurriculars should the average student take? Obviously, everybody has their own, situations. It's different for everybody. But if you had to say like one number on average, like what would your number be? And then another question is also, do you think that they should, do you think it matters a lot that these extracurriculars tie into the major that the student plans on selecting?
Yeah, so this is definitely something that a lot of high schoolers spend a lot of time kind of puzzled about. But I think after the college admissions process, looking back, I think one of the good things that I did was I kind of just did what I wanted to do. I tried to not think about like, oh, I need this number of extracurriculars and this many hours of volunteering and this many of this, like, because the actual admissions process doesn't really look at, I mean, sure, they'll look at like how many you're doing, but more than that, it's more like how much did you enjoy? Like, what are you passionate about? That's the whole point of them looking at what extracurriculars you're doing. So for a number, I don't really know, because I think students should just do what they are interested in and just try to explore as much as possible. And spend as much time as they can without overwhelming themselves for this certain like milestone goal achievement. At the same time, I don't think that's a reason to just not do anything, because it's a really valuable time to just try out as much as you can before college and after college, before work. So just trying out stuff would be really good. Like, I think try out at least like 2 things, if not more, if you can handle it. But yeah, I think rather than looking at a number or like how many hours or how many days you're spending on this thing, just try to find interesting things that you like and you want to spend time on, and try to focus more on that, I think.
So I know you talked about doing extracurriculars that you're really passionate about or that you wanted to do. So I guess my follow-up question would be, what were your major extracurriculars that you did?
Yeah, so I've been doing music and dance since a very long time ago. I've been doing music since kindergarten and dance since like 4th grade. So I kept on doing those. I play the violin and piano, and I dance Bharatanatyam. So I did that for all 4 years, even though it kind of slowed down during the pandemic time. So senior year, maybe a little less, like competitions and performances. But then besides that, I also did try to get some volunteering experience. So in 9th grade, I did the Trium Music Honor Society that was available at my public school, MHS, Mansfield High School. And so that one, I did that. So we volunteered at like music related events. And then in 10th grade, I volunteered at my at the SSC club, which was Student Services Corps. So that was just a more general volunteering. We would go in for the food bank and other more general charity events. In 11th and 12th grade, I volunteered at Brigham and Women's Hospital. So I was just working with some patients there, like helping make their visit more comfortable. So that's for volunteering. And then I worked at Kumon, at the local Kumon Center. It's a math and reading place. I worked there for all 4 years, 2 days a week. And then I think something that I should say about exploring was when I switched to, before I switched to OHS in 9th and 10th grade, I did math team because I was doing that since middle school. But then when I switched to 11th grade OHS, they have some really cool clubs also. So I tried out the entrepreneurship club, which I loved, because in 10th grade I had done this. I did the Girls Who Code Club too. I forgot about that. In 10th grade, I did the Girls Who Code Club. And then I kind of got interested into entrepreneurship because we did this competition called Technovation that was business related. And so I did the entrepreneurship club in 11th and 12th grade, and I tried that out. And then in 12th grade, I was interested in journalism. So I tried out for the OHS Observer, which is the student-run newspaper, online newspaper. And they were kind of just rebooting. So I was the editor-in-chief in my senior year. So I kind of was just trying out new things. I kind of tried to add on one new thing every year. Like I was switching up with volunteering and then with Girls Who Code and entrepreneurship and then Observer. But yeah, I was just kind of exploring and seeing what I liked. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask about the entrepreneurship club. So I'm not sure too much about what that's about. And I think you're talking about Technovation, I believe it was. I don't know if I said that wrong, but yeah, I was just wondering like what kind of work that was, like what kind of work did you do in the entrepreneurship club? Like what kind of things did you learn about, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so okay, Technovation is what I did in 10th grade, and it's for it's this competition for girls to specifically get more girls involved with coding. And so the competition, what you do is you build this app that solves a problem. And so you have to code the app and then write this business plan for it and you submit it. And so you can have a team of up to like 4 or 5 girls. And yeah, you just submit it, you get graded. And so I did Technovation in 10th grade because I was in the Girls Who Code Club at my public school. But then Technovation was an opportunity. Actually, I did it with OHS's Girls Who Code Club, even though I was in the MHS one because we were in the same chapters. And yeah, that's how we got linked up. But so I did Technovation with OHS in 10th grade. And then I was kind of interested in like writing the business plan and things. So then in 11th grade, I joined the entrepreneurship club, which was kind of similar, similar in the way that you're still targeting, you have to find a problem in the world and then create this business idea that targets it. It didn't have to be tech related, and it was not just for girls, it was for anybody. And so in 11th grade, I competed in 3 different competitions, the Conrad Challenge, the Diamond Challenge, and the Blue Ocean Challenge. And so I don't know how much detail you want me to go into this, but I mean, I can explain my project too.
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's up to you. If you think it's like Yeah, I mean, if you're passionate about it, I guess it would make sense for you to explain it.
Sure. Well, yeah, I won't go into too much detail then, but basically it was targeting plastic pollution. And so me and my partner and I created this idea for banana fiber water bottles, like creating bottles out of banana fiber because it reuses a waste material and stops plastic pollution. So we created this business idea out of that, and we competed in 11th grade with for those competitions. And the club basically just gives a framework for it. So the leader will have weekly meetings and different like rubrics and worksheets to work on while we're working for this competition. So that's pretty much how the club itself went. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sounds like Shark Tank. Anyway, so obviously you were talking about your extracurriculars. You did a whole lot of them from what I gauge. So in your opinion, what do you think was kind of like the X factor in terms of your extracurriculars? Like, obviously when you do your common applications, you have a list of extracurriculars you can write down. So for you, what was the primary extracurricular that went in the top spot that you felt you were most passionate about and you felt most represented you, I guess?
So I was just explaining my entrepreneurship club, and that was what went in my top slot because I won first place in the Blue Ocean competition. My partner and I, we won that competition. And then we were also semifinalists in the Conrad Challenge, in the Diamond Challenge, and we were Conrad Innovators, which was kind of like a second semifinalist thing in the Conrad Challenge. But so thank you for the party emoji. Wow. But so yeah, that was kind of what I put in my first spot because I really liked entrepreneurship. And then after that, I put like music, dance, but everything else that I did. But yeah, entrepreneurship for me.
I think that's interesting to hear. I mean, I'm pretty passionate about business too, and I'm part of a few business clubs as well. So that's cool to hear that it's going around. So now I'd like to shift the next couple of questions to your major, behavioral neuroscience. So first I want to ask, what exactly is this major and how did you select it?
Yeah, okay. So behavioral neuroscience is well, it's neuroscience, so you're studying the brain, and the behavior part comes in because you want to analyze how humans process the world and interact with the world. So you're kind of looking at systems that humans have created to interact with the world. So language, music, there's so many different ways that we see and perceive the world. So that's kind of what's being studied. And so it's kind of a mix of three different fields. Neuroscience, obviously, which is biology, and then linguistics, which studies language, and then philosophy, because religion is another way that humans interact with the world. And so kind of philosophy of mind, those sort of concepts are also covered in behavioral neuroscience. The way that I chose this major, I didn't really know in advance. I only chose it while I was applying for colleges because I was looking at the different programs that different schools had. And then I was reading this description of like a behavioral neuroscience major, and I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting because it has a lot of the things that I am interested in. Before that, I went in knowing that I wanted to do something with neuroscience because I had taken a neuroscience camp, and then I had also studied neuroscience in my biology class in 11th grade. So I knew I was interested in that, and that's where I kind of went from. And then I specifically chose behavioral neuroscience because it had a lot of concepts that I was interested in when I found out about the major.
Got it. So you were sort of interested in this, like not like from the start, but for a good amount of time.
Maybe not from a good amount of time. If you look at the broader picture, when I was in kindergarten, I, for some reason, wanted to be a pediatrician. And so I would go around saying I was going to be a pediatrician for sure. And that went on until like my 6th grade or 7th grade. So for a very long time, I wanted to be a pediatrician. But then in 7th, I was like, maybe research. And then in 9th grade, I took a biology class. And I really didn't like it. I really, really, really hated my biology class. So I was like, I'm not doing biology in the future. I'm going to go into computer science. So that's what kind of drove me in 9th and 10th grade. And then in 11th grade, I took biology again, I was convinced by my parents to give it another chance. And then this time I really liked it, and I specifically liked neuroscience. So that's where it kind of started from. So not for a super long time, but for a little bit, maybe like a few months.
Okay, got it. So, I mean, it sounds like, I don't want to say spontaneous, but it was sort of like a suddenish decision, I guess. So, I mean, is there any sort of safety net you've weaved around the selection? Like, in other words, for some reason, if you end up not liking neuroscience or behavioral neuroscience as much as you did in the past, I mean, you know what the plan is forward? Have you spent any time considering that?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that I've been thinking about, because I might go into college and then be like, actually, I want to switch majors completely and do like history. But the thing is, I'm really interested in a lot of different things, and I've also had some experience. Like I really like entrepreneurship, like I said before, and then I've also done other. I'm interested in science in general. Like I enjoyed chemistry. I think definitely I want to do something in the sciences in the future. And if not, I really like neuroscience, but if not neuroscience, then I think I would still do something science related, but maybe business related, that sort of thing, maybe comp sci related. I think yeah, I have like a lot of things that I am interested in still. So even if I don't do neuroscience, I think I can still find something that I would be more interested in.
Oh yeah, that's cool to know. So it means you have a lot of other options in case this for some reason doesn't work out. So that's cool.
So we had that question asking you about what behavioral neuroscience even is. So it's obviously something that I think a lot of people maybe aren't aware of or don't know exactly what it is. So my question to you is, what are some of the career paths for this major? Do you need like an advanced degree, like a PhD or like licenses, that sort of stuff to practice it? Like, do you have any examples of the kind of like occupations that somebody would end up in after studying behavioral neuroscience?
Yeah, so I think what I am mainly looking at is pre-med and med school. I think that's definitely a possibility, like neuroscience related. But I still haven't made up my mind about med school either. So other options besides doing that is, I think research is definitely a possibility as like a cognitive neuroscientist. So that is a research possibility. And then behavioral neuroscience can also be applied in a lot of different fields if you like match it up. So if you do behavioral neuroscience and computer science, you can definitely get into the tech industry, because neuroscience information is useful for designing like graphic interfaces and the UI, like user experience. So I think there's tech possibilities, and then also teaching, therapist, psychology. I think there's a lot of options for this, because you can also, like I said, match it with others. I've also heard of matching behavioral neuroscience with design and art, or with data science. And each of those can lead to different career paths, like storytelling and art, or like with data science, you can do computer science, tech related things again. So I think there's a good amount of things that you can do with neuroscience.
So have you ever shadowed anyone or like spent some time with somebody who has a job in the behavioral neuroscience, like who's somebody who studied in that field and then, you know, maybe had a job? Or have you ever had like a discussion with somebody in that occupation to kind of see what it's like before?
So I haven't shadowed anybody, partially because of the pandemic. There was a lot less opportunities to go in person and meet different doctors. I have talked to some behavioral neuroscience majors at Northeastern after I joined, because there's the orientation groups where you can meet other people with the same major. So yeah, short story is that I have not shadowed with anybody. But if you have the opportunity, you should definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was actually my next question. If somebody has the time, should they shadow? So I guess you already answered that. So yeah, it can be very valuable to see somebody's perspective, kind of see what your life can be like in the future if you follow a certain path. So yeah, I guess we encourage people to try and do that if you have the opportunity.
Definitely. I look forward to doing that in the future, meeting my professors and getting research opportunities. I think anything is really an opportunity if you get to meet anybody that it has some sort of like importance or connection to anything you're interested in. Just take the opportunity, meet them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that ties in with the whole networking, especially once you're out of college, job sources, those type of things. So it's a good point. I'd like to now switch gears to your college pick, Northeastern University. So how many colleges in total did you apply to? And if you had one, what was your reach, target, and like safety ratio?
Yeah, okay. So I think I applied to 14 schools in total. Yeah, it was 14 schools. And so that's actually considered a lot. OHS had college counselors that would work pretty closely with you to help with the whole process. And so I think a more average number or normal, slightly more normal number that won't be as stressful is like 7 to 10. And one of the main requirements for the ratios was that you should make sure you have 3 likely schools or safety schools, basically, that you're like practically guaranteed admission into, because worst comes to worst, you should have some place to go. So that was like one of the main requirements. So I had 3 safeties. And then I had a few possible schools, which were like, I have a pretty good chance of getting into it. It's not like 100% guaranteed. I mean, even safety isn't guaranteed, but possibles are a little more risky. And then there's reach schools. And honestly, reach schools are almost discouraged, like maybe just have 1 or 2. But if the more reach schools you apply to, the more chances of rejection that you have. And that can definitely be pretty like hard hitting after applying and doing a lot of work. So having safe possibilities that you know that you'll get into and you can see yourself being there, I think was one of the main things that they told us. So I definitely had like 3 safeties and then 3 or 4 possible schools and then a few reach schools. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned this like in your explanation, but would you say like that 7, or was it 7 to 10 you said? Would that be like a good number of colleges to apply to for any of the seniors watching this right now?
Yeah, I think 7 to 10 would probably be a good number that if you like spread out over time, you can do in a non-stressful way, and you still have a lot of possibilities. I've heard people applied to 15. I mean, I applied to 14 schools, right? And I've heard people apply to more, like 20 and more. But honestly, at some point, it's like you're only going to go to one place at the end of the day. And so rather than spending so much time stressing yourself out over several applications, especially with reach schools, because they require so many essays and so many things to write and work on. So kind of just be easy on yourself and be smart. So make safer decisions, like don't be unrealistic about which colleges you might get into and which ones you might not. So yeah, 7 to 10 is kind of a solid number, I think.
Okay, that's good to know. So now I'd like to ask, in the colleges you did get into, why did you choose Northeastern University in particular? And what sort of process did you follow to like eliminate your other options to end up with Northeastern University?
So this is kind of a funny story because I went I was very, very like stressed almost about I didn't realize it would be so stressful because I thought the hard part was done once I finished applications. But then once I got back the colleges I got into, I was like, how do I choose now? So this is not what most people do, I think, at least. But I made this excessive PowerPoint with like a 6-part rubric for like the things that I wanted in each college. And I spent like hours doing research on each website. And I think I was looking for like student life, their financial aid offer, the academic rigor, like, and how it fit into what I wanted, because by that time I knew I wanted to do behavioral neuroscience. So I looked at which ones had the best opportunities for that. And then I had, what was my fourth one? I had like extracurriculars or something. Oh no, I had research and co-op opportunities. That was something that I wanted. And then the other two were like professors, the different teachers that are there, because teachers are definitely important. And then study abroad opportunities, because that was also something that I wanted to have. So I made like this list of 6 things that I wanted in each college, and I looked up all the things for the colleges that I had, and I made like a long PowerPoint presentation that broke down each pros and cons of each of the colleges, and I kind of made my decision with that. I definitely also talked a lot with my parents. That helps a lot, in clear communication. Getting advice from people that are close to you is definitely helpful. So that is pretty much how I chose my college. It's kind of a weird process, but it works for me. So I don't know if that works for everybody, probably doesn't. But the point is just to think through what you want out of the college and then pick which one has the best ones. And oh, did you want me to say how I picked Northeastern specifically?
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. Well, ultimately, Northeastern was a really good school, and something that I think a lot of students end up choosing Northeastern for is their co-op program. They have a really, really good co-op program. And that was definitely what enticed me the most. So that was probably one of the main reasons why I chose it. Besides that, I got a pretty good financial aid offer too, which actually is pretty important, because while you're applying, you might not really think about financial aid and how you're going to pay for college. But then once you have the numbers in front of you, you're like, oh, this is pretty important. So the financial aid offer was also pretty important, and that worked out with Northeastern also. So I think co-op, financial aid, and then the research and study abroad opportunities and the academic rigor, like those, I mean, that was pretty much my rubric. It basically had what I wanted. So that's why I chose Northeastern.
That's really cool to hear. I mean, do you have any suggestions in, like, just like you said, you had the PowerPoint strategy. I mean, are there any other, things that people your age usually do when they're eliminating their college options? Do you have any advice about that for the seniors who may be watching this?
So I think one of the main things that other students did, and I did too, was reaching out to current students who are at the college and could tell you about their experience. I emailed like 3 or 4 students across the board from the schools that I was interested in that had specifically graduated from OHS too. Like I talked to my college counselor and got some names of people that had graduated from OHS and gone on to those schools. So I talked to them. I had a list of questions that I asked about things I was curious about that you can't find off of a website. I also went to a bunch of events that were hosted by the college. In between, like they'll release their decisions in March or April, usually, and then May 1st is your deposit day by the time, so the date that you have to make a decision by. So in that month of April, they'll have several events that are kind of meant to help seniors making a decision, where you can meet current students and then also learn more about the specific program that you're admitted into and different opportunities that the college has. So I went for a ton of those events. I think basically just gathering as much information as possible, so that you can really make like a well-informed, thought out decision. So I think that's probably what's most important.
Okay, so I think we've covered most of what we wanted to talk about. So I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you felt we didn't cover, or any topic you may want to discuss that we didn't touch upon already? You don't have to have one. It's just, we put this section always just in case you have something else that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't really have any specific topic in mind, but I think for the audience, if they're like seniors applying for college, or juniors that are starting that process, I think just don't stress out too much, because this can definitely be a very, very stressful time. It was definitely very stressful for me too. Even when there isn't a global pandemic going on, it's still pretty stressful. So make sure that you have time to kind of relax, like just get away from college applications, and then also make sure that you plan everything in advance, because doing stuff at the last minute is not a good idea. So just those two things, I think, and then try not to get too much of like societal pressures into your head. I found like there's always a lot of talk about what colleges people are applying to and stuff, like people will always ask, but if you don't feel comfortable, don't share it. I didn't share what colleges I was applying to or what I got into with anybody. I would just say, if they asked, like, sorry, I don't feel comfortable, just to kind of not have that sort of pressure on myself, because it can definitely that can be another stressful factor. So kind of making sure that you're not overly stressed. I think I said stressed a lot, but that's the whole point. So yeah, take care of yourself, basically, and good luck.
That's a really good piece of advice. I think, I mean, it can, I'm not at that stage yet, but it seems like it can be very stressful, because college usually sort of is an indicator of how your future is going to be. So that it makes sense that it can definitely be stressful. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to ask one last sort of fun question to, just clear the air a little bit. So what are you most excited about heading into college?
Well, after a pandemic and 2 years of full-time online school, which I did love, but I'm super excited to see people in person, meet new people, I think is what I'm very excited for. Besides that, I think my classes are going to be pretty interesting, because I have a lot of freedom with them. And I'm in the city of Boston, so that is probably the third thing that I'm most looking forward to, because I've always loved cities, so I'm looking forward to explore Boston.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, thank you so much, Janani, for taking the time to speak with us today about your college admissions process. We wish you all the best in all your endeavors throughout college and beyond, and we are excited to see the progress you make in the behavioral neuroscience field. To everyone listening, we hope you found this information helpful, and please feel free to pass on this link to anyone else it may benefit. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.